I'm very excited to introduce Naomi Clare, who is with Storycraft Labs. We've talked about them a lot already with the experience profiles, and she has been doing a lot of work with Megan Henshaw from Google XI Project. I have been, stalking you guys and happy to hear a little more detail about all the work that you guys have been doing. And a term I heard from Megan, I know you have been working with her on this idea of belonging. And when we think of attendee experience, what does that really mean? How do we create that? So thank you for joining us. I'm going to hand it over to you to tell us more.
I'm so excited to share, because this journey, and it has been a journey for Megan and I, it has been one where we've learned a lot through the process. And one of the things that we've learned about is belonging. What does it mean? The answer is that it means many different things to different people. So the trick is really understanding your audience to know what sparks belonging for them. And this idea, something that I was there, I was back again. The idea of the journey is something that I want to talk about today with you. And I'm going to do that by sharing a presentation that just goes through a little bit of the process, the journey that I've been on with Megan at Google and with the rest of the team at Storycraft Lab as well. So I don't know if we're able to bring up my my screen presentation. Here we go. Yes. So this was how it all began. Let's talk about that. So it began early in this year, kind of at the end of 2021. We'd first connected. Megan had put out a call for folks to join the XI community and contribute there. And that community is like this amazing incubator and accelerator space for innovation, specifically to do with experience design. So it's something that everybody here should be aware of and watching. And they had at the start of this year 3 areas that they wanted to investigate. And we plugged into this first one initially, the new rules of engagement, social norms and appetites. And what we brought to them was the experience profiles tool that everybody's been working with and started to play with through the techsytalk event. And we said, we're going to offer this up for some experimentation. Let's see how it works in helping Google XI understand the evolving techno-social norms and the ways that our audiences are evolving. And we began that investigation alongside serendipity, delight, and then some work that was happening also on kind of how are we redefining our value narratives. The really interesting thing about this journey, as I just shared, is that we didn't start off with the idea that belonging was an endpoint or even a destination in any way as we began our work. We began with that area of preferences and looking into personalization. And what we found is that the act of personalization are often acts of inclusion, because when you are considering somebody's preferences for personalization, you are being inclusive of their unique needs, desires, and frame on the world. And when that happens, when you're creating that inclusive event, you are automatically generating community. And when you hold the spaces for community to gather and form, and you support that within your events, those are the moments where belonging blossoms and flourishes. So we've started on our empathy journey and had all of these discoveries along the way. And the big one for us was that all roads lead through belonging. And that was really super exciting for us. And the more conversations that we had about belonging, the more we wanted to talk about it. Actually, we wanted to understand more and more, as I said to Liz, what does belonging mean to different people? And what we were finding through the conversations is that people talked about belonging. They got a handle on the concept and a way to communicate it to others through 3 main avenues. People might talk about meaning and how applicable and useful and relevant an experience is. Wow, that experience was so useful to me and advancing my growth and my place in life and how I feel, my perspective on the world, right? That if you came at it through making meaning, that was one avenue for accessing belonging. Another and quite natural way to start is to think about the feelings, right? That Raymond talked about and Phil talked about as well, right? So often people would say, well, when I belong, I feel. And they would talk about this emotional journey that they would go on to arrive at a place of belonging. And we started to hear a lot about where I began and how I came to belonging there. The other area that people consider when we talk about belonging is what we termed magic. It's essentially this transformative element of the experience, that something changed. It changed my perspective. It changed my view on the world. And we started to, as we were listening to all of these conversations and taking notes in the mural tool that you all will see, we started to hear just these amazing quotes coming from within the industry. And the office hours that we were holding on belonging became a place that many people felt a sense of belonging at, in a kind of weird and meta type of a way. And we started to hear much more insight around the meaning, the journeys through meaning to arrive at belonging, the journeys through feeling to arrive at belonging, the journeys through magic to arrive at belonging. And as we were gathering all of this wonderful conversation and data around dialogue, we started to count words and consider how they appeared, those journeys that people would take to get to an end point of belonging, as expressed by the unique individuals. And what was so interesting, and this is what I'm super excited to share today, is that we began to see, kind of distilling from those conversations, moving from this very qualitative to quantitative data in terms of the words that were turning up, a series of ladders or pathways to a state of belonging. And one of the big learnings for us is that, we encounter, when we see people coming into our experiences, we encounter a beginning state and we encounter a desired end state that we are helping people move towards in the experiences that we're creating. So we were seeing, for example, some people talking about beginning from a place of skepticism or fear and ending up at freedom to be. So the ultimate kind of end result that we saw here was that we have 8 pathways that we're looking at here to bring our audiences through to a state of belonging. Freedom to be, which is a pathway of acceptance. You might encounter attendees that begin with fear and move from fear or skepticism to a place of safety and trust, ultimately expression, and then that state of freedom to be. And for us as event creators, it becomes about, and experience creators, it becomes about how we provide those moments and the support to move people from one step on this ladder of belonging to the next step. And experiences are a way that we can be very intentional about how we do that. Love and appreciation is a pathway of recognition, that you're not just invited or accepted or valued, but ultimately loved. And that condition of love and appreciation is adjacent to that state of belonging. The true authenticity pathway sits on the cusp of feeling and magic, and people approach this with an intent or an expectancy, and they can go through this process of being vulnerable and sharing and finding that reinforces a sense of community. We also saw, and what was really interesting here at the bottom through magic was that things started to get a little more weird in in the magical pathways. They weren't quite organized in the same way, but we've got 3 different pathways through magic that all end at this sense of universality. The journey discovery pathway is something that is much more singular or lone, and then as you move through from open-heartedness to serendipity and connection, that feeling of wow, in this whole big wide world, this amazing universe, I found you. That's kind of like a one to few connection that happens and has a transformative aspect to it. And then there's the group experience that happens through shared experiences there. And you can see the other pathways here: fulfillment and joy, a pathway of happiness, and taking somebody from a passive or viewer state at their entry point at our experience to ultimately feeling fulfilled and the sense of happiness that comes with that. Adjacent to that, purposeful energy, an intention. You might begin in a reflective state, but through synthesis, discovery, and advocacy, you end up kind of full of purpose. And that is another condition that takes us to belonging. And then finally, empowerment, that pathway of action. You might begin seeking dialogue, wanting to talk to folks about different topics. But through the process of knowledge exchange and conversation and connection with people, you are inspired, you find your tribe, and you really feel empowered to act in a way that you hadn't done before. So these are the emerging insights. As I talk about our journey with belonging, it's something that is ongoing. We're not done yet. We started to play with filling in, as experienced designers and creators. We felt a draw to fill the gaps in between. And then we stopped ourselves because we realized that the most powerful thing actually is going to be to put this framework and idea into the hands of other experienced creators and allow them to fill in the gaps, and not be prescriptive about what the outcomes are. But as you approach your different events, asking those questions around how you might assess where your audience sits on their belonging journey, and what are the opportunities for you to move them from one state to the next. And I'm just sharing here, for those of you that have a second device and you want to scan that QR code, we are going to be opening up a Wheel of Belonging specifically for the techsytalk community here to go in and add your own perspectives and quotes on how you approach and access belonging in the events that you experience. I can see here that my time is up, so I'm just going to hold there.
So much good content. And this is so exciting. So we're putting the link in the chat for everyone to be able to check out. We do have more time tomorrow with Naomi to dive into this Wheel of Belonging more. I saw Chloe said this map is amazing. Another person said, I love the idea of conversations about magic as a means to belonging. This is definitely the kind of thing that I geek out on personally. It's like, oh, look at all these things that we could be thinking about. Do you want to share a few more things before we move on to Megan? I don't want to cut you off.
No, it's all good. I could talk about this for ages, really, but I'd talk everybody's ears off. I think the best thing to do is just to encourage everybody to pop into the Wheel of Belonging. I've given you kind of the background on how we came to that and how we're using it. See what it does for you, and then tomorrow, if we come back, we'll spend a little bit more time looking at that and talking about some of the specific responses. But yes, somebody did see an Ali Magyar sighting in there.
I heard she's here. Awesome.
So that's amazing. But I'm so excited for you to hear from Megan as well on the neuro inclusion and the new project.
Yes, thank you so much, Naomi. And I do